Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Amuna Tira Vanda Jodi Yamuna Tira Vanda Jodi Radha Madhava Punya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Vihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Welcome everyone to the Sunday Feast. The Sunday Feast is traditionally an event that's held, you guessed it, on a Sunday. And It contains some kirtan, some chanting, some philosophy, some vegetarian food, and tonight also we'll be offering lamps to Krishna for this very special month. This is a formula that's been going on in every Hare Krishna temple on the planet Earth for the last 53 years. So we're part of a half a century plan here. Any new guests here tonight? Anyone here for the first time? Welcome. Welcome. Anyone else? So welcome to you all. My name is Kurma Das, and I'll be speaking tonight. The program is a little bit of philosophy, and then we're going to have the Arati ceremony for Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda and associates. And as I said, tonight we'll be offering lamps also, and I'll tell you all about that now. Tonight's discussion or talk is entitled Krishna, or should I say God as Butter Thief. God as Butter Thief. This is called Kartik Meditations. So today we'll be reading and discussing an 8-verse Sanskrit poem. I'm going to ask Terry to pass out the words, and there's enough here probably for one each, and I'd like you to hang on to this for the rest of the evening. We're going to, for those of you that haven't sung this before, we'll be singing it tonight a little later. This is a poem which is traditionally sung during this ancient Indian or Vedic calendar month known as Kartik. It's also known as the month of Damodar. This month commenced about a week ago on the full moon day. So, what is special about this holy month of Damodar, you may ask? And you may also ask why, what makes it holy? What makes it a holy month? So in all religious cultures of the world, calendars are used. You have the Christian calendar, you have the Jewish calendar, you have the Islamic calendar, you have the Hindu calendar, many calendars, all based upon religious culture, and there's plenty more. Yeah. So the Indian subcontinent is no exception. There are many Vedic calendars, and in the Vedic calendar, which consists of 12 months, every 4 years there is an extra month to make up for the slight deviations in the number of days in the year. And so every 4 years, according to the Vedic calendar, there is an extra month, and that is coming up next year. That's called the month of Purushottama, which is considered also to be very auspicious. So I've mentioned that word auspicious a couple of times. You may be asking, what does this word auspicious actually mean? Auspicious simply means that which is favourable for or conducive to success. Favourable for or conducive to success, and that's a good thing, isn't it? Everybody wants to be successful in whatever they do. So in this holy month, auspicious month of Kartik or Damodar, those who are serious practitioners of Bhakti Yoga take advantage of the conducive atmosphere to cultivate auspicious advancement on the yoga path. And in this case, this is the path of Bhakti Yoga that we are following in the Hare Krishna movement, which brings us closer to Krishna, to God. So you may ask, how does this month bring one closer to Krishna? How is it conducive? There are authorities in the science of Bhakti Yoga, great sages, who have explained that any act of Bhakti Yoga that's performed during this holy month is or yields a result 100 times or sometimes 1,000 times more than usual than performing an act of bhakti any other time of the year. So tonight we're going to be talking about Bhakti Yoga, but also we're going to be performing it together. We've already performed it, we've already had kirtan for those of you that were here for kirtan, and later on we'll be also offering lamps together to Krishna, which is an act of bhakti. So in front of you is this 8-verse poem. It's called Damodar Astakam. So we'll be reading it, talking about it, and singing it. Very auspicious. So this poem, as you can see, it's written in a different language. That's the Sanskrit language. And the Sanskrit language, however, has been transliterated. This is not Devanagari or Sanskrit text, but this is transliterated Sanskrit. In other words, Sanskrit that's been especially presented in the English text that enables you to pronounce it properly. And if you're familiar with the books of Srila Prabhupada, they're all written in the Devanagari text, which is the original Sanskrit text, and then comes the transliterated text, as you see here with the verse, and then the English translation. And also in Prabhupada's books, you'll have the word-for-word translations also. So very authoritative. Now in the ancient Sanskrit language, poems are beautifully constructed in perfect meters and can not only be recited but also sung in many exquisite melodies. And when they're sung, they can also be accompanied by musical instruments such as a mridangam or kartal or any stringed instrument that's there in classical Indian music. In fact, you can chant Sanskrit mantras with any musical accompaniment, with piano, Western instruments, Eastern instruments. No restriction. The first two parts, or you could say the first two varieties of Bhakti Yoga are Shravanam and Kirtanam, which means hearing and chanting. And chanting can also mean singing. And so singing and hearing the singing is a way of filling up one's consciousness with auspiciousness. So this is only 8 verses. There are sometimes Sanskrit epics like the Maha-Mantra, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is also an epic poem, if you like. Srimad Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses, and very big poems. This is a little wee one, just 8 verses. And this is called an astakam. Astakam. In Sanskrit, the word astaka means 8. Astakam means a verse of 8, a song of 8 verses. If you're familiar with the Vaishnava culture, you'll know that there are many actually songs which are composed in 8 verses. Another characteristic of Sanskrit devotional poetry, of which this is a good example, is that it's been constructed very scientifically, according to metrical rules. There are metrical rules in many poetries of the world, and Sanskrit is not an exception. In Sanskrit, the metrical rules is known as chanda, which means that they are based on a fixed number of syllables per line. Fixed number of syllables every line. And if you have a fixed number of syllables every line in a poem, when you recite that poem, it's very pleasing to the ear. Pleasing to the ear, pleasing to the mind. And the idea is that by writing and composing and reciting songs in the Bhakti tradition that have been written that are very pleasing to the ear. The idea is that actually these verses are meant for glorifying Krishna, and by composing them according to these rules, they will be pleasant when they're recited, and Krishna will be very pleased. And so the idea is to please Krishna, and then automatically we also will benefit. Not only will the reciter be benefited, but the audience will also be benefited, because it's very pleasant to the ear and to the heart. And the purer the heart of the poet, the more pleasing that poem will be to God, and the more auspicious and pleasant it will be for those that hear it. So as I said, there are rules for writing Sanskrit poetry, and the word chanda describes that. Chanda actually means, in English, literally, chanda means that which is pleasing, alluring, lovely, nourishing, delightful, or charming. That's the definition of chanda. So poems are written in that way, in the Sanskrit tradition. Now, chanda means meter, and there are different types of meters in the Sanskrit science of poetry writing, and that's called pada. Different meters are called pada, and different poems have different meters, and the word pada literally means a foot, like what we have at the bottom of our ankles, a foot. And the idea is that the verse proceeds step by step. You may know that Sanskrit is known as the mother of all languages, or the mother of many languages. In the Sanskrit language, pada is used, as I said, meaning foot, and from that comes the Latin and also the English words such as pedestal, which means something that's standing on one foot, that you put things on, a pedestal. A pedicure, when you go and get your feet looked after, and words such as pedestrian, all things that are relating to feet. So you see, there's a very intimate connection between Sanskrit and English. So in Sanskrit poetry, the word pada refers to the meter, and the number of a verse is broken into different parts. And according to the Sanskrit science of poetry writing, there are 7 major meters. So this verse in front of you is written in a meter known as Jagati. That means that there are 4 verses, or multiples of 4 verses, and in this case there are 8. And in every line there are 12 syllables. On every line there are 12 syllables. So this is a particular type of Sanskrit poetry. When we say syllables, we mean words, or words that are inflected. In other words, 12 units of pronunciation that have one vowel sound each, with or without surrounding consonants. I'll give you an example. Have a look at this poem in front of you. The first, and you'll see that every single line follows this rule. There are 12 syllables. We'll read the first syllable. We can count them. Namam Ishvaram Sach Chid Ananda Rupam. 12. And look at the second line. La Sat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam. So every line there are 12 syllables. So 12 syllables, or 12 units of pronunciation. And this sets a certain mood, because each Vedic pada, each Vedic verse that has a certain meter, invokes a certain mood when you recite it. So as I said, Sanskrit poems can be sung with musical instruments, and if that's the case, there are certain tunes that you can sing them to. And in Sanskrit, in the science of music, it is called raga, or melody. So there are certain ragas or melodies that can be used to recite, to accompany the recital of these verses. And along with the melodies, there are rhythmic patterns called tala, or talas, which are ways of keeping a certain beat when you sing the song. So when we sing the song later on, you'll notice a certain tune which you may or may not have heard before. And actually, if you visit various Hare Krishna temples around the world, you'll find that these days they generally chant. It's very common to chant in one particular raga, known as Raga Asavari. But I'm not going to be singing that melody tonight. For instance, if you go to Mayapur, Vrindavan, you go to Bombay, you go to any of these big Hare Krishna temples, these days they're always singing in this one raga. But back in the old days we were singing in a different raga called Raga Bhairavi, which is a very classic raga. I'll give you an example. If you visit many Hare Krishna temples today, you'll hear that this song is sung in Raga Asavari. I'll sing it. Namamishwaram Satchid Anandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam. So that's Raga Asavari. But I'm not going to be singing that tonight. I'm going to be singing Raga Bhairavi, which is this. Namamishwaram Satchid Anandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam. So that's a different tune, and it invokes a different mood. So we'll be singing that tune tonight, and you'll pick it up as we go along. So this poem is from the Padma Purana, compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, and the authorship of these 8 verses has been accredited to a great sage called Satyavrata Muni. There are 2 Satyavratas actually. Satyavrata, if you know the pastimes of the Lord in his form of Matsya, the fish incarnation, Matsya Avatara, there was a pastime there with a great king called King Satyavrata, or Satyavrata Maharaj. But this is a different Satyavrata, Satyavrata Muni. He wasn't a king, but he was a humble sage. And I don't know much about him, but he wrote this very nice poem. So let's read and talk about a little bit this very nice poem in front of us today. I'll read the Sanskrit, I'll read the English, and then we'll quickly discuss it. Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Yashoda Biyolukala Davamanam Paramrishta Matyanta Todrutya Gopya. Verse 1. To the Supreme Controller, who possesses an eternal form of blissful knowledge, whose glistening earrings swing to and fro, who manifested himself in Gokula, who stole the butter that the gopis kept hanging from the rafters of their storerooms, and who then quickly jumped up and ran in retreat in fear of Mother Yashoda, but was ultimately caught. To that Supreme Lord Sri Damodara I offer my humble obeisances. So the author starts off by chanting Namami, Namamishwaram. Namami means I bow down. The idea is that the writer of devotional poetry is offering his poem in a mood of humility. Not that I'm a great poet and here's yet another one of my great poems, but he's offering them with great humility. And he's bowing down with his head on the ground and he's offering this poem to God. Therefore he says Namami. In every devotional poem, there's what's known as a mangala, or a prayer to seek blessings before one proceeds. So that's there, namami. And who is the person to whom the namami is being offered? Who is the poet bowing down to? He's bowing down to Ishwaram, Namam Ishwaram. And what are the qualities of Ishwaram? Ishwaram means the supreme person, the supreme controller. Ishwara means controller. And in fact, we all have this quality of being controllers. The father is controlling his children, and the boss is controlling his employees, and etc. It goes all the way up. The heads of state are controlling the citizens. So everyone has some allotted control, but there is a supreme controller, and that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, Ishwaraha, Paramaha, Krishna, Satchit Ananda Vigraha. In the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma, the first created being of the universe, says that I offer my obeisances to Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is confirmed here by the author of this poem. He's saying, Namam Ishwaram, and who is that Ishwaram? Satchit Ananda Rupam, he who is the embodiment of concentrated bliss, sentience and eternity. But then he says, in the second part of the verse, Yashoda biyu lokala dhavamanam paramrishtam atyantato drutya gopya. Lasat kundalam, he says, Lasat kundalam gokule brajamanam. Lasat kundalam means swinging earrings. So this Supreme Person is appearing in the form of a baby, Krishna, who's engaging in his childhood pastimes. And he's wearing earrings, beautiful golden earrings, kundala. And they're swinging. Why are they swinging? Because he's running. He's running very quickly. And why is he running? He's running because he just stole some butter and his mother is chasing him because he's been naughty. Now you may say, well, how is that possible? You're talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller, that Supreme Person to whom everyone bows down, and now you're saying that he's in the form of a baby? Well, that is quite possible, because God can take any form that he likes, and for his most devoted servants in the mood of parental relationship, you can become a parent, or follow in the mood of a parent of God himself. This is not a common understanding in many religious cultures. I mean, in Christianity you have especially in Catholicism and the Orthodox Christian traditions, you have the concept of Jesus as a baby, and you have very nice pictures of Mary with Jesus, and even sometimes they resemble somewhat pictures of Mother Yashoda and baby Krishna. So that concept is there, but it's not very developed, and it's not very well documented. And of course, one could say that well, Jesus who is Jesus? Is he God, or is he the Son of God? And then it goes into Christian theology. Maybe he's all three. He's God, he's servant of God, etc., etc. So there is some understanding, but it's not very developed. But in the Vedic tradition, there's very deep understanding that you can have different relationships with God. You can be a servant of God, and you can worship him in reverence, as is the case in many religions of the world. You bow down before God, or people have the concept of an angry God, and etc., etc. But in the Vedic tradition, you can worship God in many ways, and in this case, the poet is absorbed in the mood of wanting to see God in the form of Krishna in his childhood pastimes as a baby. And in this form, he's wearing earrings and he's running in fear. Yashoda Biyulakala, which means, Biya Comes from the word bhaya, which means fear. So just like a child, an ordinary child runs away in fear if they've done something wrong and the parents are coming to chastise them. You can worship God in that form. He had so many pastimes like that. And the devotees of baby Krishna or Bala Krishna, this is their meditation. So in this first verse we see Krishna's running away, Yashoda Biya, from his mother Yashoda. You may say, well, hang on, you're saying God has a mother? Yes, God, when he comes to this world, he chooses his devotees who become his parents, and he's not born in the usual way. For instance, when we have children, then they're born in the hospital, or maybe you have them at home. But when the babies come out, they're not particularly attractive in those first few moments. They're all covered with stuff, and their eyes are closed, and their hair's all matted. But when Krishna was born, he appeared in front of his parents, fully clothed, with jewelry and golden ornaments and earrings and beautiful, beautiful hair, and covered with all sorts of ornaments and flower garlands. Not an ordinary birth. And of course Krishna's appearance was not ordinary from the very instant of his appearance. So why is Krishna running away from his mother? The backstory is that once upon a time baby Krishna was there with his dearmost mother, Yashoda, and she was feeding Krishna from her breast, as mothers do, drinking the breast milk. And then all of a sudden, Mother Yashoda, she was a very busy householder lady, she noticed that the milk was boiling on the stove, and of course, Hare Krishna, it's not like a normal stove when you can just simply go and turn it down or turn it off. Ask someone, can you please turn off the stove? No, because it was a wood stove or a cow dung stove, and there was a huge big pot of milk. And anyone that knows anything about cooking knows that if you've got a big pot of milk on the stove and it starts to come to the boil, you have to take it off very quickly or turn it down, because the milk's going to boil over and make a terrible mess. So the milk was boiling, so Mother Yashoda only had a few moments. She took Krishna off her lap, she placed him down on the ground very quickly, and she ran to take the pot of milk, very big pot of milk, off the stove. And Krishna was very angry. How come you stopped feeding me? And you put me on the ground. I was really enjoying that. So Krishna, being a naughty child, and children that are very intelligent, because Krishna is the most intelligent, so he displays this pastime of naughtiness. He decided to do something because he had just been neglected by his mother. So he went into the next room, he climbed on top of a grinding stone. They have these big mortars, grinding mortars, that they use for grinding spices sometimes, or grinding wheat. And Krishna moved it, even though he was a little baby, somehow or other. He crawled into the next, he was walking at this stage, but he moved this huge grinding mortar, and he used it to climb up on top of, and he got a stone and he smashed pots of butter that the gopis kept hanging in their rafters, because these were Vaishyas, these were farming families, and they kept the butter in pots hanging on the rafters, just so that naughty children and monkeys didn't eat them. But Krishna just climbed up on top of the mortar, smashed the contents open of the butter, and started eating it, sharing it with his friends, and the monkeys came, and so the monkeys got big handfuls of butter, and everyone was happy, except Mother Yashoda. Yeah. And then she came, so she decided that she was going to have to do something drastic, and as was the culture, if children didn't respond to chastisement, sometimes very naughty children were tied up, and this may not be politically correct these days. There's some countries where now it's not even legal to spank your child. I think they've just banned spanking children in Scotland. If you spank your child who's been naughty and someone sees you, they can give you a fine, or I don't know, take you to court. Who knows? Crazy world. But what to speak of tie them up? But this was culturally correct. Tie them up a little bit, especially if they're really very naughty. Mother Yashoda tried to tie him up, baby Krishna, but the rope that she chose to tie him up was too short. So she wasn't sure what to do, so she got some more rope and tied one end of one rope to another. Now, because it was only three finger lengths too short, which is about 2 inches. So she got some more rope. Now certainly this is going to be big enough, but she tied it around his waist, which is what normally was done. And because he was running all over the place doing naughty things, tie him to the grinding mortar and tie the rope around his waist, but it was still too short. So then she got more rope, tied more rope to the end of that rope, and now it was very, very long rope, but when she wrapped it around his waist, it was still too short. What is going on? She was bewildered. Then she got all the rope she could find in the whole house. Meters and meters and meters and meters and meters of rope, tied them all together, wrapped it around Krishna's waist, still 2 inches too short. These are some of Krishna's wonderful pastimes. Now Krishna is known as he who is bound by the rope around his belly, and therefore he's known as Damodar. Udara means belly, and Dam means rope, so Damodara means one whose waist is tied with rope. So these pastimes are there in the great Sanskrit epic Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically the 10th canto. And these pastimes, which are described very briefly in these verses, come from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Verse number 2. Rudantan muhurnetra yugumam rijantam karamboja yugumena satanka netram muhusvasakam patrirekanka kanta stitagravam damodaram bhakti badham. Upon seeing his mother's whipping stick, because before Krishna was tied up, there was a little tete between Mother Yashoda and Krishna. She came in after tending to the pot of boiling milk. Krishna wasn't there. Where's Krishna? She went into the next room. I thought so. He was up on top of the grinding mortar, handing out the butter. So she got very angry, so she grabbed a stick and she chased him. And there's pictures of Mother Yashoda chasing baby Krishna. Of course, Mother Yashoda, she had flowers in her hair and she had jewelry and garlands, and she couldn't keep up with Krishna. Krishna was running here everywhere. And eventually, even though Krishna is uncatchable even by the greatest of yogis, he was eventually caught by Mother Yashoda. But while he was running, he was crying, as babies do, children do. If they've got themselves into trouble, they usually cry. A bit of fear and a bit of how would you say? What's the word I'm thinking of? Guilt. And as he was rubbing his eyes, the black eye ointment, the kajal, which you see many Indian children, they have nice black eye makeup. Many people wear kajal in India, coryllium. It's actually very medicinal for the eyes. Men also wear, and ladies and children. But it's like ladies, if you're wearing mascara and you start to cry and you start to rub your eyes, you'll look pretty messy after a very short time. So Krishna, he was crying and he was rubbing his eyes as he was crying, and all the black ointment was running down his face. So that's described here. He cried and rubbed his eyes again and again with his 2 lotus hands. His eyes were fearful and his breathing quick, and as Mother Yashoda bound his belly with ropes, he shivered in fright, and his pearl necklace shook. To this Supreme Lord Damodar, I offer my humble obeisances. So this is the meditation of the author Satyavrata Muni. He's meditating on these beautiful pastimes, and in his heart, as he's meditating, he's seeing these pastimes enacted in front of him. Sa tanka netram. Krishna has frightened eyes. And Trirekanka Kanta, you see there, last three words of the third line means that the ornaments that were placed around his neck were shaking, and his neck is described as Trirekanka, which means marked with three lines, just like on a conch shell. Has anyone ever seen a conch shell? Conch shells. It's a famous shell, but it's also used in the arati ceremony and in temples. And the conch shell, it has its lip, and around the lip there are three lines, three concentric circles. And so Trirekanka means Krishna has a beautiful neck like a conch shell, which is marked with three circles. So the point here, Bhakti Badam, Hare Krishna, welcome. Bhakti Badam, the last two words of this verse, means bound with love. Bound with his mother's devotion. Of course, Mother Yashoda wanted to bind him, but she couldn't. But eventually, because she was very disappointed and confused that how is it possible that all these ropes still don't fit around his tummy, little baby Krishna, his tummy's little, and you don't need about this much rope, but all the rope in the whole house tied together still wouldn't reach. So she was bewildered, and she was perspiring, and she was confused. And so at this point, Krishna allowed himself finally to be bound by the ropes to satisfy his mother. So these are described here as super excellent pastimes. Iti Drikshvalila Bir, verse number 3, Ananda Kunde. These super excellent pastimes of Krishna's babyhood drowned the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy. In other words, anyone that remembered these amazing pastimes and that remembers them to this day will be absorbed in happiness. It is described here, pools of ecstasy, not just a few teaspoons of ecstasy, but huge pools of ecstasy. So a lot of happiness is available in remembering Krishna's pastimes. Therefore it says, Satavriti Vande, I offer my obeisances hundreds and hundreds of times. The author is not happy just to bow down once, but he wants to bow down again and again and again, because he's overwhelmed with happiness and overwhelmed with devotion. Therefore it says, Satavriti Vande, hundreds and hundreds of times I offer my obeisances to Krishna. Text or verse number 4. Varam deva moksham na moksha vadimva na chanyam vrineham varisharapiha idam te vapur natha gopalabalam sadame manasi abhirastam kim anye. He says, although, my dear Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benedictions, I do not pray to you for liberation, nor eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon. My only prayer is that your childhood pastimes may constantly appear in my mind. O Lord, I do not even want to know your feature of Param Atma. I simply wish that your childhood pastimes may ever be enacted in my heart. So Satyavrata Muni, the author, is continuing his prayer here. He's saying, I don't want liberation. What is liberation, you may ask? Liberation means to be released from the bondage of living in this material world, and there are different types of liberation. In various religious traditions of the world, there is this concept of heaven. In Christianity, you have this concept of heaven. In Hinduism, if I could use that term, you have the concept of the devas. Of course, it's there in the Vedic tradition. The devas and the planets of the demigods, the planets of the gods. So you can go and you can live on the heavenly planets. And in Islam, you have this concept of, what's it called, Dira?
Jannah. Jannah.
And in English means?
Heaven.
Yes.
Paradise.
Paradise. Paradise. So you have this concept of going to paradise, going to heaven, going to the heavenly planets, the higher planets in the universe. But the author here is saying, I don't want any of that. I don't want any of those things. I just simply want to remember your pastimes. I'm not interested in going to heaven. I'm not interested in any of those things. I just want to be able to remember you and meditate on your beautiful form of Gopala Balam, in your form as baby Krishna. Gopal, the tender of the cows. In the Vedic tradition, the young children were given an opportunity to look after the calves. The cows were too big for them, but the calves were just the right size, so the little children will be entrusted with looking after the calves, and the older cow herdsmen would be entrusted with the bigger animals, the cows. So Gopala Balam, that is the form that Satyavrat Muni wants to always remember. And there's no question of going to heaven or praying to God for this, praying to God for that. In the Western tradition of religiosity or religious life, we are encouraged to pray to God for something. Not only in Christianity, not only in Western religious cultures, but even in Indian religious life, you have this concept of praying to Mah Durga, praying to Lord Shiva, praying to Ganesh, and often people pray for things which are not necessarily very spiritual. They pray that may my son pass his exams, may my grandmother be cured from her illness. And in Western religious culture, you have this concept of praying for our daily bread. We pray, give us this day our daily bread. Which is, it's nice that we're praying to God for our daily bread, because there are many people who don't even believe that God exists. So praying to God for our daily bread, as in the Christian tradition, it's better than being an atheist. But God is actually going to give you your daily bread, really, whether you pray for it or not. It's like if you go and sit down at the breakfast table. Of course, this is not a common thing these days, breakfast tables, but when I was growing up there was such a thing as a breakfast table where you actually sat down with your mother and father. You didn't eat upstairs in your room in front of your computer, but you sit down with your parents. And if you came down every morning and you said, my dear father, please give us our daily bread, the father would say, son, you don't need to pray for your daily bread. We're looking after you. Your bread's here on the table. See, the toast is popping up there in the toaster. You're going to get your breakfast every day. You don't have to worry. We're looking after you. So this concept of praying to God for our daily bread, God is going to look after you. You'll get your daily bread. The ants, Hare Krishna, the ants are getting, they only need to eat a little tiny grain of food, and the ants, you don't have to make arrangements for the ants to come and give them little tables and chairs. The ants will find something to eat very nicely. And even the elephants, who eat hundreds of kilos of food every day, they always find something to eat in the jungle. And so Krishna's looking after everyone. So you don't need to pray to God for your daily bread. It's better than not praying to God at all, but it's not a very high level of worship. And Satyavrat Muni here is praying, I don't want anything. I don't want any benediction. I don't want to go to the heavenly planets and live for thousands of years. I don't want to win the lottery. Some people pray to God to win the lottery. But he's not praying to God for any of those things. I just want to remember your childhood pastimes. So this is a very advanced level of bhakti, of meditation. Verse number 5. Idam te mukham bojam atyanta nilair vritam kuntale snigdaraktaischa gopya muhuschumbitam bimbarakta manasi avirastam alam lakshalabhai. O Lord, the cheeks of your blackish lotus face, which is encircled by locks of curling hair, have become reddened like bimba fruits due to Mother Yashoda's kisses. What more can I describe than this? Millions of opulences are of no use to me, but may this vision constantly remain in my mind. So this same mood is continuing here in the 5th verse. I don't want any number of benedictions, blessings, opulences. What use are they? I just want to see your beautiful form. And Krishna's beautiful form is being described here. In case the reader needs some assistance, he's describing, giving the reader some more information about the beautiful form of Krishna that he's seeing in his meditation. Mukambojam. Ambojam means, and Amboja is, there are many words in Sanskrit for lotus. There is Amboja, there is Padma. We counted, my wife and I counted one day 8 different words that we knew that were commonly used for a lotus, because the lotus is like the queen of flowers. What are some of those other words for lotus? Padma, Amboja, Saroj, many words. So Mukamboja, Krishna is described as having a lotus face. This is a poetic device. His face is compared to a lotus because a lotus is the most beautiful of all the flowers. And so Krishna has the most beautiful face, charming, especially in his childhood form. And so he's described as having a lotus face. Krishna is also described as having lotus feet. And Queen Kunti, the great devotee of Krishna, says also Krishna is described as having a navel like a lotus. He has a face like a lotus. He has eyes like a lotus. Aravinda Dalaya Taksham. Aravinda is another name for lotus. So Krishna has lotus eyes, he has lotus feet, he has a lotus face, he has a navel like a lotus. So Satyavrat is just praying, I just want to see your beautiful features. And some of those other features are described here. You have a blackish lotus face. Krishna's complexion is like a monsoon cloud. A monsoon cloud is a beautiful bluish, blackish color. Not black and not blue, but bluish black. And Krishna, his complexion is bluish black, like a beautiful monsoon cloud. And here, Satyavrata Muni in his meditation is seeing baby Krishna as having a blackish complexion, but his cheeks have become reddened, like bimba fruit. A bimba fruit is a very bright red fruit. Just like your jacket you're wearing, your hoodie. Bright red, just like that. And that's the color of a bimba fruit. And baby Krishna's cheeks, although they're bluish black, they've become reddened. And why have they become reddened? Because Mother Yashoda has been kissing baby Krishna's cheeks so much. Sometimes if you kiss a child's cheeks again and again and again, they go pinkish color. I remember when I was young, I don't remember, but I was too young, but apparently I had chubby cheeks, and I remember apparently my mother telling me that all the relatives used to pinch my cheeks, and babies don't like that. So they used to pinch my cheeks, oh, nice little babies, chubby cheeks. And, if you pinch a baby's cheeks, after a while they go all red colour. But anyway, that's a mundane sort of comparison. But Mother Yashoda was kissing baby Krishna's cheeks so much that they became reddened out of the affectionate kissing of Mother Yashoda. And his locks of curling hair encircled his beautiful lotus face. Krishna's hair is black, and it's the colour of a crow, very black, and it's described that his curling hair are like the feathers of a crow, very sort of long and fluffy. So Krishna has curling locks of hair that are surrounding his cheeks, that have gone pink, reddish colour from being kissed so much by his mother. This is the meditation of Satyavrata Muni. I don't want any benediction, forget benedictions. I don't want anything else. This is my benediction, just that I can meditate on seeing you in this form. Verse number 6. Namo Deva Damodar Ananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukkha Jalabadimaganam Kripa Drishti Vristyati Dinang Batanu Grihaneshamam Agyam Edi Akshidrisya. O unlimited Vishnu, O Master, O Lord, be pleased upon me. I am drowning in an ocean of sorrow, and am almost like a dead man. Please shower the rain of mercy on me, uplift me, and protect me with your nectarian vision. So Satyavrata Muni, the author, his meditation is intensifying, and his emotions, spiritual emotions, are heightened. First of all, he's addressing Krishna by his many names. God is actually a category, but it's not actually God's name. God has many names. Just like in the Vedic tradition, you have 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. In Islam, you have the 99 names of Allah. So God has many names, and his names are given to him according to his pastimes. Krishna is known as Gopal because he herds the cows and he gives pleasure to the senses. So Krishna has many names. Some of these names are listed in this verse. Deva. Deva. Krishna is addressed as Deva. Namo means I bow down, just like the song started with Namami, I bow down. So now Satyavrata Muni is bowing down again, literally or otherwise. He's overcome with spiritual emotion. And he's saying, Namo Deva. Deva means, oh, Divine One. Damodara means Krishna whose belly has been tied up with a rope. Damodara. Namo Deva Damodara Ananta. He's known as Ananta, or Unlimited One. Vishnu. Vishnu means omnipresent. So he's being addressed. Deva, Damodar, Ananta, Vishnu. Please be merciful upon me because I'm drowning in an ocean of sorrow. What does that mean? You might say, well, I thought you said that Satyavrata was happy and he's absorbed in happiness, but now he's saying he's drowning in an ocean. I don't understand that. That's because this is a very heightened level of spiritual emotion, and Satyavrata is feeling separation from Krishna. He's feeling, because he's meditating on baby Krishna here, but he wishes that this beautiful form of Krishna will appear before him, in front of his eyes, not just in his meditation. So he's feeling separation, just like in our tradition of worshipping Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya says, Aslisyava padaratam pinastu mam adarshanam mamahatam kurotu va. Is that the verse that I'm thinking of? Ainanda tanujakin kada patitang bang vishame bhavam buddho. I am also, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, that I'm drowning in an ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of birth and death. So this is a very graphic example here. Imagine if you were thrown into the ocean. You may be an Olympic swimmer, but nevertheless, you would not be able to survive. So that terrible fear, that intense emotion of drowning, it's a very, very graphic feeling. But in separation from his beloved Krishna, the author Satyavrata is saying that I feel like I'm drowning in separation from you. Previously, in one of the early verses, it's described that the super excellent pastimes of baby Krishna drowned the inhabitants in pools of ecstasy. So this example of an ocean is being used, this poetic metaphor of an ocean is being used again, but now it's described in a different way, that the ocean is very fearful. I'm missing you, Krishna, and I want to have your association. And I'm feeling like a dead man. I'm dead in separation from you. Please uplift me and protect me with your nectarian vision. If you're thrown into the ocean, if you fall off a boat or something and in the middle of the ocean, or you somehow or other find yourself in the middle of an ocean, the chances of you surviving are very, very slim. But if somehow or other you're picked up from the ocean, then you'll be okay. But you won't be able to swim to shore because you're thousands of miles away from the beach. You will drown. But there are examples, people who are thrown into the ocean, but they survive. How is it possible? Well, somehow or other they're picked up. I remember my mother, well, I wasn't born yet, but when my mother was 10 years old, my mother and her brother, my uncle, they related to me that in London in the Second World War, especially around 1940, 1941, when the war was really kicking in and the Luftwaffe were bombing London, the Germans were bombing London, and it was such a serious situation that in England they were evacuating their children. The children were all gathered up and they were sent on boats to Australia, to New Zealand, to Canada, South Africa, various places to protect them. And there would be obviously people waiting for them to share their home with them. But these children were 7, 8, 9, 10, like that, 11. I think my mother was 8 or 9 years old, maybe a bit older. And as many people who wanted to voluntarily protect their children from possible death, because many, many houses were being bombed. Hundreds of people were dying every night. The children were sent away on boats to various destinations, and sometimes they were gone for a year or two. So my mother and my uncle were on a boat. They were just kids. And there was another boat which left at the same time. But that boat, and my mother reached the destination with my uncle. They were living in, they were sent to Australia, so they got on a boat. That boat was going to Sydney, and there was another boat going somewhere else. I don't know where exactly it was going, maybe Australia, maybe Canada. But a number of boats were torpedoed by the German submarines, and every one of those children, or most of them, were drowned at sea. But there was one instance, and my mother showed me this book, where there was the boat and it was torpedoed and practically everyone had drowned except for 2 children who somehow or other found themselves in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It could have been the Atlantic, I think, actually. The boat hadn't proceeded very far. Even though these boats full of children, they were marked as merchant ships, still sometimes the Germans would torpedo them anyway. And so this brother and sister found themselves, 8 or 9 years old, clinging onto a lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic. All their children, all their friends had drowned, and they were the only 2 survivors on an upside-down lifeboat in the middle of the icy cold Atlantic. Not a place that you will survive very easily. Anyway, these two children, the girl especially recalls, all of a sudden, I found myself in a warm bed, and I don't understand what happened. And they came to see her and they said, "We found you clinging to the lifeboat. Your brother and yourself have survived, but everyone else drowned." So somehow or other, it was their destiny, karma, that, if you like, everyone on that boat was destined to drown except those 2 children, and somehow or other, they were picked up by a passing ship. So that is called mercy. Somehow or other, the merciful seamen that were sailing by saw them, picked them up, and saved them. So that graphic example is given here, that I feel like I'm drowning in the ocean. Krishna, unless you pick me up, I will certainly perish in separation from you. So that is an intense and a very elevated mood of bhakti. These prayers are very deep and very exalted. Verse number 7. Kuveratmajo badamuchaiva yadvat tvaya mochitao bhakti bhajao kritaucha tata prema bhaktim swakangame prayachcha namokshe grahome sti damodareha. So again, Satyavada Muni is saying, I don't want liberation. I just want to remember your pastimes. And I just want to see you, just like these 2 people that are described in this verse got the opportunity to see you. Who were these people? O Lord Damodar, in your form as a baby, Mother Yashoda bound you to a grinding stone with a rope for tying cows. This we talked about. Then you freed the sons of Kuvera, Manigriva and Navakuvara, who were cursed to stand as trees, and you gave them the chance to become your devotees. Please bless me in this same way. I have no desire for liberation into your effulgence. This verse number 7 is referring to another of another pastime of baby Krishna, connected with this one of being tied to the grinding mortar. The story continues. Mother Yashoda bound Krishna by his belly. He didn't agree to be bound, and she had to get more and more rope, but eventually, out of compassion for his mother, she was very distressed, he allowed himself to be bound up, and then she left him there for a very short while, because Mother Yashoda loved Krishna very much, and she didn't want to see him tied up very long. So it was a token punishment. The plan was she would tie up Krishna for a few minutes, and then she'd come back and release him. But anyway, in the meantime, Mother Yashoda got back to her household duties for a few minutes. And what happened was that baby Krishna, who was, how old was Krishna at this point? 2 years old. A tiny little baby. He was tied to this huge grinding mortar, which was probably 50, 60, 70, 80 kilos in weight. What happened was Krishna just started crawling and kept on crawling out into the courtyard, dragging along this 70 kilo grinding mortar behind him. Not conceivable for a small baby. But Krishna did it anyway, and he was crawling as if he was dragging along a little toy, little baby cow or something, a little toy. And he crawled and he crawled and he crawled right out into the Nanda Maharaj's courtyard, and there were these 2 big trees called Arjuna Trees. In Ayurvedic medicine, there's a tree called Arjuna, which is very good for the heart, for Ayurvedic medicine. And the Arjuna tree, the interesting thing is, because Krishna's pastimes are very amazing, Arjuna trees have very, very deep roots. They're famous for growing their roots so deep into the ground that when they grow, and they're huge, big trees, this wide each, when they grow their roots into the ground, it's very difficult to dig up the roots because the roots go down many, many meters. So I thought it was significant that they weren't tied to any tree, but they were tied to the Arjuna trees, which are unmovable, even by a tractor or one of those huge pieces of machinery. But baby Krishna just kept on crawling, and there were 2 trees, and he crawled between the 2 trees, and as he crawled between the 2 trees, the big mortar that he was dragging along was too wide to fit between the trees. And so Krishna kept crawling, but the mortar got stuck. So then Krishna just gave the mortar a little tug, and the 2 trees came crashing down. And out of these trees came 2 glowing, effulgent demigods. Beautiful, effulgent gods, godlike men. So the pastime was that once upon a time, and it's mentioned in the verse, Kuveratmajo, the 2 sons of Kuvera, he's known as the treasurer of the demigods, because Kuvera has got lots of money, he had 2 sons who became spoiled. Just like if you're a rich man and you have children, sometimes those children go bad, they get involved with drugs and women and go out partying too much and spend all their father's money. And so Kuvera's sons, they went bad, and they became involved with drunken behavior and wanton cavorting with girls. So Nala Kuvera and Manigriva, the 2 sons of Kuvera, they got themselves drunk, and they were singing and dancing naked in the river with naked girls. And all of a sudden, Narada Muni came along, the great saint, the great sage Narada. And as Narada Muni appeared, playing his veena, as he does, the girls realized, oh, this is Narada, what are we doing? And they immediately ducked down under the water, ran away, put their clothes on. This is a serious offense. We're naked in front of this great saint. But Nala Kuvera and Manigriva, they were so drunk that they couldn't figure out what was going on, and they just kept singing and cavorting, exposing themselves to Narada Muni, and Narada Muni was disgusted, and so he decided to curse them to become trees, because according to the law of karma, if you like to stand up naked, you will get an opportunity in your next life to become a tree. Sometimes you see trees and they look like sometimes people standing there like this. That's because in their previous life they were people standing naked. And so that's the karma of wanting to expose yourself everywhere. You can become a tree. So Narada Muni cursed them to become trees, but his curse was not an actual curse. It was a curse, yes, but it was also a blessing. Because it is said that they got a chance to stand there for 100 years or so as trees, big trees, but they got a chance to think about very carefully what they'd done, and they were very patiently waiting because Narada Muni cursed them to become trees in Krishna's father's garden. So Narada Muni knew that eventually baby Krishna will come and he'll pull his grinding mortar that he'd been tied to and pull the trees over, and then immediately out of those trees came the two souls that were inhabiting the trees as Nalakuvera, Manigriva, and then they were given a chance to return to the heavenly planets, and they were given a chance to see Krishna. So the author of this poem, he's saying, you gave Nalakuvera and Manigriva, who were just drunken larrikins, you gave them the opportunity to see you. And how is it that I don't get this opportunity? How blessed they were to see you in your form as baby Krishna. I also want to be blessed in that same way. You gave them the chance to become your devotees. Please bless me in the same way. Verse number 8. Namaste studamne spura dipti damne Twadyo darayatha vishvasya damne Namo radikaye twadya priyaye Namo nanta lilaya devaya tubhyam. So this is the final verse. It's the summing up. Often the 8th verse of an astakam is like a summing up, the conclusion of the prayer. Namaste, again namaste. Satyavata Muni started the prayer, Namami, and then again Namo Deva Damodar Ananta Vishnu, halfway through, and now at the end of the prayer, Namaste, again he's offering his obeisances. Spura Dipti Damne means you are the abode of blazing light. And then he says, the Lord, O Lord, the entire universe was created by Lord Brahma, who was born from your abdomen, which was bound with a rope by Mother Yashoda. This is very deep philosophy. To this rope, I offer my humble obeisances. I offer my obeisances to your most beloved Srimati Radharani and to your unlimited pastimes. Lord Brahma is mentioned here. Lord Brahma is the first created being in the universe, and he's known as lotus born Padmaja. One of Lord Brahma's names is Padmaja, which means Ja means to be born, as in Janma. Krishna says Janma, Karma, Jame Divyam. My birth and my pastimes are all divine. So Lord Brahma, the first created living being in this universe, when there was no other creatures in this universe, Lord Brahma was born. But how was he born? He was self-born. He had no mother. He just came out of the navel of God. A lotus grew out of the navel of Lord Vishnu, and out of that lotus, which opened up, came Lord Brahma. Quite a spectacular birth. So Lord Brahma is known as lotus born, and he was born from the navel of God. So that there's a meditation going on here. The comparison is that baby Krishna was bound around his waist in his navel area. He was bound by Mother Yashoda. From that, and he was bound in his abdomen. That same abdomen of Krishna is where Lord Brahma himself was born from. So, in ecstasy, the author is saying, the entire universe was created by Lord Brahma, who was born from your abdomen, which was bound with a rope by Mother Yashoda. And then he says, to this rope, I offer my humble obeisances. Because that rope has become not an ordinary rope. It's been used to tie around the abdomen of baby Krishna. That rope has become like an item of pure spirit. And so he's offering everything connected with Krishna's pastimes is spiritual, including the rope that was used to tie him up by his mother. So Satyavrata is saying, I offer my obeisances to the rope. And then he offers his obeisances to the abdomen. Actually, he offers his obeisances to the abdomen first. No. No, he offers his obeisances to the abdomen. Yes. So, Namaste Stu Damne, Spura Dipti Damne, I offer my obeisances to the rope which was used to tie up your belly. I offer my obeisances to you. And finally, he says, I offer my obeisances to Srimati Radharani. Wherever there is Krishna, there is Srimati Radharani. Whenever you see Krishna, when he's older, he's always surrounded by the cowherd girls headed by Sri Radhika. So the author is offering his obeisances to Srimati Radharani. He's saying that by your blessings, Radharani, I will get the opportunity to see Krishna and to serve Krishna. The devotee always prays to Srimati Radharani, please give me an opportunity to serve Krishna. Therefore he says, Namo Radhikaye, Tvadiya Priyaya. You're very dear to Krishna, I offer you my obeisances. So the author finishes his prayer by saying that if Radharani is pleased, then you will be pleased, Krishna. And if you're pleased, then maybe you will be pleased to fulfill my desires, which are that I will always get an opportunity to remember your beautiful pastimes. And so the author is praying that he will always, he aspires to be included in these beautiful pastimes of Krishna. So that's the meaning of the song that we're going to be singing very shortly. Thank you for your patience. We ran a little late. Does anyone have any quick questions about anything we've discussed here tonight? Thank you for your patience. This is a very very beautiful song, and it's very deep. And I'm not sure. Maybe I've given shed some light on it. Any questions or yes?
Thank you very much for a very nice
Thank you.
lecture. You said that the rope was short, like 3.
I think 3 fingers.
Yeah, 3 fingers.
2 or 3 fingers.
They signify something. Maybe you can.
Yes, those 3 fingers. They're described as what?
It's actually 2 fingers.
2 fingers.
And one is mercy, Krishna, and the other is the devotee's endeavor.
Right.
So together with mercy and endeavor, then one can achieve the goal of getting Krishna to surrender to our love.
Right.
Eventually.
In other words, the yogis, they try very hard by their hard work, if you like, meditation, to try to attain Krishna. Just like Mother Yashoda was trying to tie up Krishna, but it wasn't going to be happening until Krishna finally gave his permission, if you like, allowed her to tie him up. Similarly, we pray for Krishna to give us the opportunity to engage us in his service. So by the grace of Krishna we can achieve that. So yeah, thank you for that explanation. Though I saw another hand popping up somewhere. I'm not sure. Did I answer your question? Right. Was that okay? Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Boo.
Yeah, when you were recounting about Krishna, Mother showed us about Krishna. This is a very amazing thing. And Krishna consents to being bound.
Being tied up, yes.
The Kali serpent, because he bound Krishna as well. All his earls.
That's right. That's right.
And then the residents, when they were almost on the point of death.
Yes.
So they searched for him because they thought they'd lost Krishna.
Yes.
Then he expanded himself.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's quite.
That's right. And that happened quite a lot in Krishna's pastimes. There's other examples too. Agasura was another example.
Yeah, we do.
Tried to swallow Krishna. And so yes, that's right. So there's some good examples you're giving there. Thank you. So Krishna allows himself to be bound up by Mother Yashoda. And the point of this song is that Krishna is bound with affection. So we can bind up Krishna with our affection. And that is a very deep meditation, and that is the meaning of this song, which we'll be singing shortly. In fact, I think we're going to start now. Now, normally we sing just the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra while the arti ceremony is going on, but tonight we'll be singing this song. So if you have just walked in and you haven't got the words in front of you and you feel like singing along, please do. What's going to happen is this. You'll see, is that candle lit, Serena?
No.
Well, we're going to light it up. There's one big candle, and there's some little hand-rolled candles, but there's something else going on over there. I'm not sure what's going on. Are we offering the little one?